You wake up before the alarm. For one quiet moment, there is nothing demanding your attention. The room is still. The morning light slips through the curtains, and somewhere outside, a bird is singing as if the world has forgotten to rush. Then your hand reaches for the phone almost before you're fully awake. A glowing screen replaces the silence. Messages, headlines, notifications. A dozen invisible hands pulling at your mind before your feet even touch the floor. And if you're old enough to remember life before all of this, something strange happens every now and then. You catch yourself thinking, this isn't how it used to feel. Not because the past was perfect. It wasn't. But because somewhere deep inside, you remember another rhythm of living. You remember boredom that wasn't immediately interrupted. You remember getting lost without GPS. You remember calling a friend's house and hoping they were home. You remember entire afternoons that disappeared into conversation, books, bike rides, or simply staring out the window while your mind wandered wherever it pleased. Those memories don't just belong to another decade. They belong to another operating system for the human mind. And perhaps that's why the ideas of Yuval Noah Harari feel so unsettling. He doesn't argue that technology merely changed our habits. He suggests something far more profound, that humanity is entering a new stage where the competition is no longer over land, money, or even information. It's over attention. The resource every government, corporation, algorithm, and artificial intelligence increasingly depends on is the same thing you experience as your inner life, your attention. Once you begin to see that, ordinary moments stop looking ordinary. You start noting how often you're interrupted before finishing a thought, how difficult silence has become, how quickly discomfort sends your fingers searching for a screen, almost without permission. And then another question quietly appears. If you can still remember what your mind felt like before all of this, are you standing with one foot outside a system that many people no longer even realize they're inside? It's an uncomfortable thought, because systems become most powerful when they stop looking like systems. Throughout history, humans have lived inside invisible structures they believed were simply reality. Kingdoms convinced people that kings ruled by divine right. Religious institutions shaped morality so completely that questioning them felt impossible. Industrial societies taught generations to organize life around clocks, factories, and schedules, until the rhythm of machines became the rhythm of human existence. Every era builds an invisible architecture around the people living inside it. Most never notice until they're looking backward. The strange thing about memory is that it allows comparison. Someone born into a fully digital world may never wonder whether constant connectivity feels unnatural, because they've never experienced its opposite. A fish doesn't question water, but you might remember waiting, really waiting. Waiting for photographs to be developed. Waiting for letters in the mail. Waiting for your favorite television show because there was no endless stream of content available every second of every day. Those pauses weren't empty. They shaped the architecture of consciousness. Modern neuroscience has shown that the brain doesn't simply work while we're focused. Some of its most important processes happen during moments of rest, when attention loosens its grip, and the mind begins wandering through memories, possibilities, and unresolved emotions. Scientists often refer to this as the activity of the brain's default mode network. It's during these quiet stretches that experiences are integrated into identity. Creativity begins connecting distant ideas, and the deeper narrative of who we are quietly takes shape. Yet what happens when those empty spaces disappear? When every elevator ride, every checkout line, every moment before sleep becomes another opportunity to consume information, something subtle begins to change. Not because we're becoming less intelligent, but because we're becoming less familiar with ourselves. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable 5 minutes of complete silence can feel now? Not dangerous, just strange, almost like your mind has forgotten how to exist without being entertained. That discomfort says more about the modern world than most headlines ever could. Long before smartphones, philosophers wrestled with a different question. What kind of environment creates a free human being? The ancient Stoics believed external chaos was inevitable. Empires rose and collapsed. Markets fluctuated. Wars arrived without invitation. The only true freedom existed inside the mind's ability to choose its own attention. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of history's greatest empires. Yet his private writings returned again and again to a surprisingly simple concern. Protect the inner citadel. Don't surrender your thoughts to every passing disturbance. 2,000 years later, the disturbances no longer arrive on horseback. They arrive as vibrations in your pocket. The battlefield changed. Human nature didn't. This isn't an argument against technology. Technology has healed diseases, connected families across continents, and placed more knowledge into human hands than any generation before us could have imagined. The deeper question isn't whether technology is good or bad. It's whether we've confused convenience with freedom. Because those aren't the same thing. A map makes travel easier. But if someone else chooses every destination, are you still exploring? Harari often describes history through revolutions that fundamentally altered what it meant to be human. The cognitive revolution allowed humans to cooperate through shared stories. The agricultural revolution reorganized civilization around farming. The scientific revolution transformed our understanding of reality itself. Now another revolution unfolds quietly around us. Not one centered on what humans know, but on who knows humans. Every search, every pause before clicking, every late-night scroll leaves behind tiny digital footprints. Individually, they seem meaningless. Together, they form something astonishingly intimate. A map of behavior. Not the person you believe yourself to be, the person you repeatedly become. And that's where the story becomes deeply personal. Because your identity has always depended on memory. Think about it. If every memory vanished tomorrow, would you still experience yourself as the same person? Probably not. Memory isn't simply a storage system. It's the thread connecting countless versions of yourself across time. Now consider another possibility. What happens when fewer memories belong entirely to you? When birthdays are remembered by social media instead of your own mind? When navigation replaces your internal sense of direction? When photographs become more important than experiences? When algorithms remind you what happened years ago before you've even thought about it yourself? Little by little, something intimate begins moving outward. Not stolen, outsourced. Convenience always offers relief. It rarely announces its cost. History offers a fascinating pattern. Every civilization creates tools that eventually begin shaping the people who use them. The invention of writing transformed memory. Socrates worried people would stop remembering because they could rely on written words instead. The printing press expanded knowledge while changing religious authority forever. Television reshaped politics into performance. The internet dissolved geographical barriers. Each innovation expanded human possibility. Each also quietly rearranged human behavior. That's the part history keeps repeating. The tool changes the user, much more than the user changes the tool. If that sounds dramatic, consider something remarkably ordinary. How often do you finish reading an article without checking something else halfway through? How often can you watch a movie without simultaneously looking at another screen? How often do conversations unfold without someone reaching for a phone because a fact can be verified instantly? These aren't moral failures, they're adaptations. The human brain evolved to notice novelty because, for hundreds of thousands of years, novelty often meant survival. A rustling bush might hide food or danger. Either way, paying attention mattered. Modern technology discovered something extraordinary. It could continuously manufacture novelty, not enough to satisfy curiosity. Just enough to keep curiosity permanently unfinished. Psychologists sometimes describe this as variable reward, the same basic principle that makes slot machines so compelling. You never know when the next swipe, refresh, or notification will deliver something emotionally rewarding. Most of the time, it doesn't. But occasionally, it does. And the uncertainty itself becomes addictive. The fascinating part isn't that humans are weak. It's that our oldest survival mechanisms are now interacting with systems designed to understand them better than ever before. For thousands of years, evolution shaped the human brain. Today, increasingly, the human brain is being studied, modeled, predicted, and influenced by technologies evolving far faster than biology ever could. That's the shift Harari warns about, not robots replacing humanity, but humans gradually losing the ability to distinguish between choices they freely make and choices subtly guided by systems they barely notice. The question isn't whether someone is controlling you. The question is far quieter. How many of your impulses truly begin with you? If that question makes you slightly uncomfortable, perhaps it should. Because discomfort has always been the first step toward awareness. And awareness has always been where genuine freedom begins. Awareness, though, has a strange way of changing everything without changing anything at all. The world outside your window remains the same. The traffic still moves. The emails still arrive. Your phone continues to vibrate with the same urgency it had yesterday. But something inside you begins to shift. You start noticing that many of the things demanding your attention never truly deserved it in the first place. That realization isn't comfortable. It's almost like walking through your own home one evening and suddenly discovering hidden speakers playing music you've been hearing for years without realizing where it came from. Once you hear them, you can't unhear them. The same is true of the invisible forces shaping modern consciousness. Carl Jung believed that much of human life is driven by forces beneath awareness. He called this the unconscious, not merely a dark basement of forgotten memories, but an active landscape influencing decisions long before the conscious mind invents reasons to justify them. What would Jung make of a world where algorithms are beginning to recognize patterns in your behavior before you recognize them yourself? It's a haunting thought. Not because machines possess consciousness, but because they don't need to. They only need prediction. Every pause before you scroll, every video you watch a little longer, every product you hesitate to buy, every article that quietly stirs your fear or curiosity. Taken alone, these moments feel insignificant. Together, they reveal habits so consistent that they begin to resemble destiny. Harari has argued that whoever controls data may eventually understand people better than people understand themselves. At first, that sounds impossible. After all, how could a machine know what it feels like to be you? But perhaps feeling isn't the point. If someone can accurately predict what you'll click tomorrow, what you'll purchase next month, who you'll vote for next year, or which emotion will keep you engaged for another hour, they don't need to understand your soul. They only need to understand your patterns. Human beings have always believed they were creatures of reason. Psychology tells a humbler story. Most of our decisions emerge from emotion first. Logic often arrives afterward, dressed as explanation. Think about the last major purchase you made. Was it entirely rational, or did it simply feel right? Think about your strongest opinions. How many appeared after years of careful investigation? And how many formed almost instantly, then quietly gathered supporting evidence over time? The mind is an extraordinary storyteller. It loves coherence. It hates uncertainty. Which is why it constantly edits reality into narratives that feel complete, even when they're not. Technology didn't invent this tendency. It learned how to work with it. Have you ever noticed how quickly outrage spreads online, compared to quiet reflection? A thoughtful conversation asks you to slow down. Outrage asks you to react. Fear demands immediate attention. Curiosity asks for patience. One is far easier to monetize than the other. Neuroscience offers an important clue here. Your brain isn't designed to seek truth above all else. Its first responsibility has always been survival. Long before human beings debated philosophy, the nervous system evolved to scan constantly for threats, opportunities, and changes in the environment. Every unexpected sound, unfamiliar face, or sudden movement could mean the difference between life and death. That ancient machinery still lives inside you. The only difference is that today's predators often arrive as headlines. Your pulse quickens over events thousands of miles away. Your stress rises because of problems you'll never personally encounter. Your brain reacts as though every alarming notification belongs to your immediate surroundings. Biology cannot always distinguish between physical proximity and psychological proximity. The screen collapses that distance. A crisis across the planet suddenly occupies the same emotional space as the conversation happening in your own kitchen. No wonder so many people feel exhausted. Their nervous systems rarely receive permission to rest. There was once a time when sunset naturally ended much of the day's stimulation. Darkness became a boundary. Now the world never sleeps. Someone, somewhere, is always posting, arguing, celebrating, panicking, buying, selling, predicting catastrophe, or promising salvation. Your mind is invited to attend every event simultaneously. Yet the human brain was never built to carry the emotional weight of billions of lives. It was built for villages, families, faces it could recognize, stories it could actually influence. The gap between those two realities grows wider every year. And with it grows a quiet sense that many people struggle to explain. Loneliness. Ironically, the most connected civilization in history often feels profoundly isolated. Not because people have fewer conversations, because many interactions no longer require genuine presence. A message can be answered while watching television. A conversation can unfold while standing in line. A birthday wish can be sent with a single tap. Kokanch has become easier, presence has become rarer. There's an important difference between being seen and being observed. Social media observes. Real relationships see. Observation collects information. Being seen requires attention, acceptance, silence. The willingness to stay with another human being without constantly reaching elsewhere. Perhaps that's why so many people report feeling invisible despite having hundreds or even thousands of online connections. The quantity of interaction has exploded. The quality often hasn't. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once warned that people eventually become what they repeatedly practice. He wasn't talking about smartphones, of course. But the principle feels strangely prophetic. Every habit strengthens certain pathways while allowing others to weaken. Attention itself behaves like a muscle. Whatever you repeatedly focus on becomes easier to notice. Whatever you consistently ignore gradually fades from awareness. Spend years training your attention toward interruption, and uninterrupted thought becomes surprisingly difficult. Spend years measuring yourself against carefully edited versions of other people's lives, and contentment quietly begins to feel unfamiliar. Spend years reacting instantly, and reflection starts feeling almost uncomfortable. The frightening part isn't that this happens. The frightening part is how normal it begins to feel. Humans adapt to nearly everything. That's one of our greatest strengths. It's also one of our greatest vulnerabilities. History reminds us of this again and again. Entire generations accepted social system we now find unimaginable because adaptation happened slowly enough to feel ordinary. The Industrial Revolution didn't transform human life overnight. It gradually taught millions to organize themselves around factory whistles instead of sunrise. Time itself became mechanical. Children born into that system accepted it as reality. Their grandparents remembered another world. Today something remarkably similar may be unfolding. Only this time the factory isn't made of brick and steel, it's made of information. Its assembly line is attention. Its raw material is human behavior. Its product is prediction. That doesn't mean there's a conspiracy hiding behind every application or device. The truth is often more unsettling. No single person designed this entire system. It emerged through incentives. Companies compete for engagement because engagement creates revenue. Creators compete for attention because attention creates influence. Artificial intelligence competes to become more useful because usefulness creates dependence. Each participant follows rational goals. Together they create an environment no individual fully controls. History has many examples of systems becoming larger than the intentions of the people inside them. Markets, empires, wars. Now perhaps digital ecosystems belong on that list. This is where Harari's warning becomes less about technology and more about identity. For centuries, philosophers asked one enduring question: who are you? Most people answered through family, religion, nation, career, values, experience. But another possibility has quietly entered the conversation. What if identity itself becomes increasingly shaped by recommendation engines? What if your tastes, beliefs, friendships, entertainment, even your sense of purpose are continuously nudged by systems optimizing for engagement rather than meaning? Would you notice, or would those influences simply feel like your own preferences? That question lingers because it has no simple answer. After all, every culture shapes identity. Every generation inherits beliefs from the one before it. No one develops in complete isolation. The difference today lies in speed. The influences surrounding you no longer change every decade. They change every hour. And they adapt to you personally. Never before has history offered each individual a reality so uniquely tailored to their existing beliefs, fears, and desires. Two neighbors can live side by side while inhabiting entirely different informational worlds. Both sincerely convinced they are seeing reality as it is. Both quietly guided by invisible architectures built specifically for them. Perhaps the greatest transformation of the digital age isn't that information became unlimited. It's that reality became personalized. And whenever reality becomes personalized, one question becomes more important than ever. Who is choosing what you see? And who are you becoming because of it? Maybe the most important answer isn't hidden inside another book, another podcast, or another breakthrough in artificial intelligence. Maybe it begins with something much quieter, the simple ability to notice, not to reject technology, not to romanticize the past, but to become aware of the moments when your own mind is no longer entirely your own. Because awareness creates a tiny space between stimulus and response. And inside that space, something extraordinary happens. Choice returns. That space has always been where human freedom lives. The Buddhist tradition has pointed toward this for thousands of years. Suffering, it suggests, is not created only by painful experiences. Much of it comes from the mind's endless habit of grasping, resisting, comparing, chasing. The world changes. Thoughts appear. Emotions rise and fall. Yet beneath all of that exists the quiet observer. The part of you capable of noticing without immediately reacting. Modern neuroscience has stumbled onto a remarkably similar insight. Researchers studying mindfulness have found that even brief periods of deliberate awareness can change the way different regions of the brain communicate. The emotional centers become a little less overwhelming. The parts responsible for reflection and self-control become a little more active. Nothing magical happens overnight. But something deeply human begins to return. The ability to respond instead of merely react. Perhaps that is the real opposite of manipulation. Not perfect knowledge. Presence. Think back to childhood for a moment. Not because childhood was easier. For many people it wasn't. But because there were moments that seemed impossibly long. Summer afternoons stretched forever. A single road trip felt like an epic journey. Waiting until Christmas felt almost unbearable, because time itself moved differently. Psychologists believe our perception of time changes partly because novelty creates richer memories. When experiences become repetitive, the brain compresses them. Weeks blur into months. Years seem to vanish. Have you ever wondered why the last 5 years sometimes feel shorter than one unforgettable summer from decades ago? Perhaps it isn't only age. Perhaps it's repetition, scrollable swipe, different. Repeat the same gestures, the same interfaces, the same loops. 1,000 tiny moments that leave almost no trace because they demand attention without creating meaning. Life begins feeling faster, not only because the clock moves forward, but because fewer moments settle deeply enough to become memories. And memory, in many ways, is what gives life its texture. If Harari is right, the defining struggle of this century may not be between nations or political ideologies. It may be the struggle to remain deeply human in a world increasingly optimized for efficiency. Efficiency is wonderful for machines. Human beings require something more. A meaningful conversation is inefficient. Falling in love is inefficient. Grieving takes time. Forgiveness cannot be rushed. Wonder refuses to follow a schedule. The most important experiences of life rarely optimize anything. They transform us precisely because they slow us down. That may explain why so many people secretly crave activities that produce nothing measurable: walking without headphones, cooking with family, reading a physical book, watching rain gather on a window, looking at the stars without feeling the urge to photograph them. None of these moments increase productivity, yet they often leave us feeling strangely alive. It's almost as if another part of ourselves has been quietly waiting for permission to return. The ancient Greeks had two different words for time. One described chronological time, the steady movement of clocks and calendars. The other referred to the right moment. A meaningful opening. A moment filled with significance rather than speed. Modern life has become extraordinarily good at measuring the first kind. We schedule every hour, count every step, track every heartbeat, analyze every second. But perhaps we've forgotten how to recognize the second. Those moments cannot be scheduled. They arrive unexpectedly. A conversation that changes your life. A sunrise you almost missed. A stranger's kindness during an ordinary afternoon. A realization that quietly rearranges the person you thought you were. No algorithm can manufacture those moments. They require your attention to be available. And availability has become increasingly rare. There's another paradox hiding beneath all of this. The more connected we become digitally, the easier it is to avoid the one relationship that follows us everywhere, the relationship with ourselves. Silence has become intimidating for many people because silence removes distraction. Without distraction, old questions begin speaking again. Am I living according to my own values? What have I been avoiding? When did I become so busy that I stopped asking whether I was moving in the direction that actually matters? These aren't comfortable questions, which may explain why endless stimulation feels so appealing. Noise protects us from hearing what quiet has been trying to say. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once suggested that the greatest danger is losing yourself so gradually that you never notice it happening, not through one dramatic decision. Through thousands of tiny compromises, one ignored instinct, one postponed conversation, one more evening spent consuming instead of creating, one more year lived according to momentum rather than intention. The frightening thing about drifting is that it rarely feels like drifting while it's happening. It feels normal, until one day you wake up wondering where the years went. Perhaps that's why remembering life before screens carries unexpected power. It's not nostalgia. It's evidence that another way of experiencing reality once existed. You remember conversations uninterrupted by notifications. You remember getting wonderfully lost because every unfamiliar street invited curiosity instead of anxiety. You remember arguments ending without someone searching for instant validation from strangers. You remember being unreachable. And somehow, despite being less connected, you often felt more present. That memory matters. Not because the past should be recreated. History never moves backward, but memory reminds us that today's habits are not inevitable. They're learned. And what has been learned can also be questioned. Maybe that's what it truly means to stand outside the new system. Not abandoning technology. Not throwing your phone into a lake. Not pretending progress is the enemy. It means refusing to believe that every innovation deserves unlimited access to your consciousness. It means recognizing that convenience should remain a servant, never become a master. It means remembering that your attention is more than a commodity. It is your life, unfolding moment by moment. Where your attention goes, your days go. Where your days go, your years follow. And eventually, that becomes the story you call your life. So let me ask you something, not as a test, but as a genuine question. When was the last time you experienced an entire hour that belonged completely to you? No scrolling, no checking, no background noise demanding a fraction of your awareness. Just you, your thoughts, your surroundings. If that question feels surprisingly difficult to answer, you're certainly not alone. Millions of people are beginning to sense the same quiet unease. Not because they're weak, because they're human. And perhaps recognizing that feeling is the beginning of something important. I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you believe we've gained more than we've lost in the age of constant screens? Or do you think there's something essential about being human that's quietly slipping away? Share your thoughts in the comments. There isn't a single correct answer, and some of the most meaningful conversations happen when people with different experiences listen to one another. The future will almost certainly become more intelligent. Artificial intelligence will continue to grow more capable. Algorithms will become more accurate. Devices will become more seamless, more personal, more woven into everyday life than anything we've seen before. That future is already arriving. The real question is whether our inner lives will grow alongside it. Will we become more conscious as our tools become more powerful? Or will we hand over one small piece of ourselves at a time until we no longer remember what uninterrupted awareness feels like? History suggests that every great transformation asks humanity to rediscover something ancient. During times of war, people rediscover peace. During times of abundance, they rediscover gratitude. During times of noise, perhaps the forgotten treasure is attention itself. Not the attention others give you. The attention you give your own existence, because every meaningful life is built from moments that someone chose to notice. A child's laugh, the smell of rain before a storm, the trembling voice of a parent growing older, the warmth of a hand you know you won't be able to hold forever. These moments don't become precious because an algorithm ranks them highly. They become precious because you were fully there when they happened. One day, years from now, the devices in your pocket will be obsolete. The platforms dominating today's conversations will likely be replaced by others. Technologies that seem revolutionary today will become museum pieces tomorrow. But the question of how you spend your attention will remain. That answer will live inside your memories, inside your relationships, inside the person you slowly became while nobody was watching. Maybe that's why remembering life without screens feels so profound. It's not simply remembering older technology. It's remembering an older version of yourself. yourself. A version that still knew how to disappear into a conversation, a book, a sunset, or a single thought without feeling the urge to document it. That person isn't gone. They've just been waiting beneath the noise. And perhaps the greatest act of quiet rebellion in this new age isn't disconnecting from the world. It's reconnecting with your own mind. If this conversation stayed with you, if it reminded you of something you thought you'd forgotten, I hope you'll come back and continue exploring these questions with us. This isn't a place for easy answers or endless outrage. It's a place for people who are curious enough to slow down, look a little deeper, and remember what it means to think for themselves. Until next time, take good care of your attention, because in the end, it may be the most valuable thing you'll ever truly